meeting of the Public Accounts Committee of the Provincial Legislature of the Western Cape. The purpose of the meeting is to deal with items as circulated to you on the agenda. Among issues on the agenda, we will be joined by the General Secretary of the South African Association of Public Accounts Committee for purposes of dealing with SAPEC matters. We are also joined by the Department of Education. A resolution we've taken when we're looking at the annual reports. We are also joined by the
Morning, Chairperson. My name is Derek America. I'm a member of the committee.
Thank you very much, Honorable America.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Matlodi Maseko, and I'm the member of the Standing Committee. Good to see you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Honorable Maseko. Mr. David, I just wanted to get, were there any indications of apologies?
Chairperson, good morning, Chairperson, honourable members, officials. Chair, there was just one apology from Minister Winger. She will not be attending this meeting today as she's already scheduled for another appointment for the entire day, Chair. And then we have the newly Audit Committee Chairperson, Raghib Najjar, that's joining us in this meeting today for WCT Chairperson. And obviously we have the Honourable Minister Mainir also joining us in this meeting. We have full membership, Chairperson, for this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davids. Honourable members, with that, as you might be aware that the meeting is a virtual meeting and is held in terms of the rules that are governing virtual meetings of the Provincial Legislature of the Western Cape. Now, honourable members, I know as a practice, we've always have a standing item that deals with matters of SAPEC. And as you are aware that we normally put that item right at the end of the agenda, but at the request of the General Secretary of SAPEC, he's requested that if we may please put that item first so that he can also, because he was actually going to be with us for the rest of the meeting, but something urgent has come up, so he has requested that if we can please allow him the slot. However, I will say that we can listen to some of the things and still will be able to take a resolution at the end of the meeting. If I may now then introduce to you the General Secretary, Mr. Sokaile, who is also the chairperson of the SCOPA of the Provincial Legislature of Gauteng. Now, the purposes of us actually having also requested him to attend is to also address some issues of SAPEC and also more specifically also if he may talk to us around the issue of the subscription. Jensek, can I hand over to you?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I've put on my screen. I'm not sure if that's how you work, but I know that most of the meetings work like that. I would like to ask if I can just flight something so that when we discuss, at least we discuss on the basis of that. I'm not sure if you are able to see it from your side, Chair.
Yes, we can see it, Jensek.
Okay. Just to indicate, Chair, that first of all, thank you for the opportunity that we should come and talk to you about matters that have to do with SAPEC. It's the first time that we're invited by a legislature, or in this case, a provincial parliament, to come and address you on these matters. And we understand the reasons why. Some of the matters are outstanding from our meeting, from our annual general meeting that we held last year in August in Durban. So there's a need for us to deal with those matters. Let me just say, Chair, that again, the apology, I sincerely apologize. Something has emerged. You'll see later when we talk about the preparation for SAPEC matters, SATCOPEC matters. is related to that. As you said, my name is Sokhayile. The surname is Kanyile. I'm the chairperson of the Public Accounts Committee at the Gauteng Provincial Legislature. I'm also the General Secretary of SAPEC. Chair, just to say that I just want to start with the main issue. We have received a letter from yourself raising a concern about our audit. You remember this is a matter that came up at the annual conference last year in August. And that matter resulted in the resolution being taken at the annual general. Sorry, that's a mistake there. August 2020, that was just after, you remember we had elections in 2019, but we were then elected, reconstituted SAPEC. At the time it was called APEC. That was completed by 30 August 2020, not 2022, 2020. Then we discovered that the 2018 annual financial statements were not adopted. So that elective meeting mandated us to process as the executive committee, the newly elected executive committee, to process the 2018 annual financial statements, which we did, and it was adopted in September. Then subsequent to that, we had to deal with the 2019. Remember, this is a period of the previous leadership, not the current leadership that was elected in August 2020. So what happened is that we had to look at the audit of 2019. And that's where the problem started. First of all, at the time when we wanted the audit to be conducted, we were told that it's going to be difficult because what had happened is that sorry, there's something happening in my screen here. You still can hear me, Chair?
Yes, Chairperson.
Okay. What had happened is that we couldn't gain access to the bank account, because for you to gain access to the bank account, you need to be a signatory. But we couldn't use the previous leadership because they were no longer in leadership positions. So we started a process of change. So this was in 2020. That's where the problem started. And every time we did a drama, a movie, because the first thing that happened is that we were able to change the signatory only in March 2021. Leadership, which was Honorable Beck at the time. Okay, they were no longer members, so I won't call them honorable. It was Mr. Beckes, Ms. Kuno, and Mr. Fatel. They had to sign that there was a change of signatories. So it only happened in March. The problem is that Mr. Beckes, Mr. Beckes, if I'm not mistaken, was from, I can't remember where he is from, but Ms. Kuno was from the Northern Cape. Mr. Fatel was from Gauteng. And to get their signatures, it took long. So that's why that process. But then what happened is that in May, the bank then, because we had started the process, the treasurer had traveled to Gauteng. The current treasurer is from Northern Cape. She had traveled to Gauteng to complete the documents. Then I was in Gauteng. I had to go to the bank to complete the document. The document had to be sent to the chairperson, who is at the time, he was in Mpumalanga. Because they want the original document, they don't want copies. We had to be couriered to them. And then there was a problem. When we looked for the documents, the bank told us that there were some problems with the documents. They had to be couriered back to Uppington, and then later we were told the documents were lost by the bank itself. So the bank lost the documents. They couldn't find them anywhere. We had to start the process from scratch. But then the bank said to us the best approach is that it's better if we do things electronically. So it's better even if in our account must then be an electronic transfer, like we do electronic transfer. So we had to complete other documents to ensure that there's that process now undertaken. That was in July 2021 when we started the process. By the end of the year, the process was not completed because the signatures that they wanted and the process. These things had to be couriered from Northern Cape to then come. Started in Gauteng, go to Northern Cape, go to Mpumalanga. And then, unfortunately, the chairperson passed on. In fact, he resigned first to be the deputy speaker in Mpumalanga, Honorable J.J. Skosana. And then immediately after that, we then appointed Honorable Mitileni to be the acting chairperson. So in the process of the documents now, we had to get another letter to change the signatories and then to remove Honorable Skosana to replace him with Honorable Mitileni. And the documents had to be redone, and that process started again. In January 2022, when we thought the process was about to be completed, Honorable Mitileni resigned. The advantage is that the documents are already in the bank. So we didn't inform the bank at the time that he had resigned because we realized that this process was going to take long again. So then our bank account was we only could get access to the bank account by March 2022. So all this time we can't access what's this thing, the bank statements for audit to be done. The bank wasn't posting the bank statements, so it's another arrangement that was made by the previous leadership, but how it was. So that's what has happened. By the time we started with the audit, there were other problems. What had happened is that we discovered that some of the documents for the 2019 audit couldn't be found. The problem, as you will know, the Secretariat of SADCOPEC was housed in the office of the AG. But in 2018, a decision was taken by the National Speakers Forum that SADCOPEC must move out of the office of the AG to Parliament in Cape Town. In the process, the Secretariat of SADCOPEC was interim. So documents that ran between after 2018 and 2019, then there was lots of documents that couldn't be found. There was a problem. But the auditors were not aware that those documents, okay, we discovered later that some of the documents are in fact not available. We couldn't find them. So we had to, with the current leadership after the August elections, after the August AGM last year, we then went back to the auditors and told them that we can't find these documents. So they rather go ahead and audit the account. If it means qualified audit, that's what it is. So because we can't delay it any further. I'm pleased to announce that the auditors are complete with a 2019 audit, which has taken them long. They only completed about last week. And the reason why is that when we went back to them to say we want them to audit, this is a big company. And that's one of the things that the executive committee said we must relook. This is a huge company. It's called SNG Grant Thornton. They audit big companies. And so our job, it was very small for them. So they prioritize big jobs. And that is one of the reasons why ours was delayed. So they shifted us from early this year. Then they said they're going to come back to us in June. And in June this year, that's when they came back and then started the audit, which we told was completed by last week. They are now engaging with PwC. PwC is another big company, which is another problem that the executive identified. That the previous executive committee appointed PwC, who charges a lot of money to do our books. So they are more the accountants of SAPEC. They are busy engaging with the auditors. We should be done with 2021, 2020, 2021, 2022, from what they said by the end of June. So, Chair, that's where we are at with the audit of the accounts of SAPEC. We're hoping that, so remember the executive, the AGM last year took a decision that We extend the term of the executive so that then they complete the process of audit, and after that we must then convene a special AGM. So we couldn't convene a special AGM sooner until this process is completed. But the executive committee met about two weeks ago, and they've agreed on the process towards the special AGM, although there could be some changes. So it's going to be called sooner. We're just waiting for the audit to be completed. Then we are going to go like that. Chair, just to conclude this part of the presentation, is that the problem must not be an individual. If you elect a chairperson, and we say the chairperson is Western Cape, we shouldn't say Honorable Mvimbi. We must say the Western Cape. So when Honorable Mvimbi is removed for whatever reasons, the Western Cape will still continue providing somebody to do the work. Had that decision been taken at the time, we wouldn't be finding ourselves in this problem, because APEC would have continued after the previous elections, moving to the new term this year. And that process created a lot of problems, because all office bearers were not back as leaders of APEC, and it took us more than a year to re-establish APEC, as you would see. So those are the things I wanted to raise, Chair. And then the other thing that it has created is the capacity to reconcile the affiliation fees, because as things stand, we cannot confirm who has and who hasn't paid, or who's updated, who has paid up as the affiliation fees, because you need an audited response or audited statement in that regard. So until then time, it's difficult to indicate who has and who hasn't. And we hope that that matter will be resolved by the end of June. And then by July, you'll be able to communicate the matter. Thank you, Chair. Let me stop there before I move to other matters, unless you want me to move to other matters as well and just complete.
I will prefer, Jensek, I will prefer you move to other matters so that when we are asking questions, we can ask questions just about on everything.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair. So just to say that to the next matter, I thought that it's important from the letter is that I think you all know that the to the Southern African Development Committee Organization of Public Accounts Committees, which is abbreviated SADCOPEC. This is a body of all the public accounts committees in the SADC region. We are also affiliates of an AfroPEC, which is the association, African Organization of Public Accounts Committees. But today I just want to focus on SADCOPEC. So SADCOPEC is charged with the responsibility for empowering members of parliament in member states to effectively carry out their functions of oversight over public sector finances, as well as promoting good governance in the region. There are currently 13 member states that are affiliated. There are some that they are still engaging to be part of that. I think we are supposed to be 15 or 16 somewhere there, but they are still engaging them. We pay as SAPEC, we pay 10,000 US dollars per annum, and you know that as the rent does what it's doing, it becomes a problem. So we end up paying. So if we were to pay today, we'll be paying more than, I think it's 190,000 rand, if I'm not, because that's where it is, about 19. But that's what we are paying as affiliation fee then. Now SADCOPEC will be hosting the annual conference in South Africa this time. Last year it was in Botswana. This time it's going to be in South Africa. So as SAPEC, we are hosting it. When it's in other countries, the hosts are the parliaments of those countries. So in South Africa, the situation is different. If we had to ask Parliament to host, there's going to be lots of issues raised about why we're using public funds to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and all those other things. But remember, the membership of SADCOPEC is SAPEC, is not the parliament. So it's basically the National Assembly and the 9 provincial legislatures. So it's the association that is hosting. So it's the association that must fund this event. So it's going to be the 15th annual conference, which we're expecting about 500 delegates, including all of the members of public accounts from all the 9 provincial legislatures in South Africa and the members of SCOPA at the National Assembly. And then there's going to be the 19th annual general meeting, which is supposed to agree on a medium-term program. Let me just emphasize on the 15th annual conference, our view is that because it's a 15th annual conference, but it's taking place when we are celebrating the 20th anniversary of SADCOPEC. We thought that it must take a different turn. What used to happen in other countries when you go there, you'll find that when papers are supposed to be developed, a certain parliament is requested. And when they come and present the paper, it's about their own experience. And then we spend time, people trying to explain what's happening in their own countries. So we've resolved that one. This time in South Africa, we're going to get independent researchers to come and present the papers, which are regionally focused, so the whole of SADC. 2, that we are going to use this platform, the conference, to assess how public financial management and accountability has evolved over the past 20 years since the establishment of SADCOPEC, and how should we be going forward? What should be the medium to long-term program? So that's the good thing about it being held in South Africa, like I said, is because it's the 20th anniversary, which decision was taken in South Africa in 2002. The APEC at the time, at its meeting, took a decision that there must be SADCOPEC established. So the following in 2003, SADCOPEC was established. Just to say that in addition to those meetings, there's going to be a meeting of the technical working group, a meeting of the office bearers. The office bearers of SADCOPEC, it's only 6 members. We also have the deputy treasurer, so that's why there are 6 office bearers. And then is the members from the other countries that are not holding any position as office bearers. So there's about 13 members of the governing council. Then from there we're going to so those are the 3 meetings that are going to be held. So this meeting, so 29th September is the technical working group meeting. 30 September is the office bearers. 1st October is SADCOPEC Governing Council. 2nd to 4th October is annual conference. Then the 5th of October is the annual general meeting. Now I must indicate that you as members of the Public Accounts Committee of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, you'll be expected to attend the meetings from the 2nd of October until the end, so until the 6th. Obviously you pay for your own accommodation and travel, but we will pay for the rest as a SAPEC. This will be in Durban because we wanted to have it in Western Cape, but it was a difficulty because one of the problems we have is that we couldn't find an appropriate venue in the CBD in the Western Cape, or Cape Town in this case, and we realized that to transport delegates from the various hotels which are going to be in the CBD to the venues we are finding was going to be a nightmare, because this is during the week, traffic is a problem. So we found that in Durban, although traffic is a problem, but they've got a way of ensuring that the navigating VIPs through the traffic. So that's the reason why we chose Durban. Just to say that as part of preparing for that, so in other words, you as the Western Cape Provincial Parliament will be represented by the chairperson, because he is a member of the executive committee, and then you need 2 other members. The constitution is very clear that it's 2 other members, one of which must not be from the same party that the chairperson comes from. So I think those are the things. So the letter has already been sent to you, Chair, to ensure that you confirm delegates who are going to attend this. Also, the letter about informing the speaker about the SADCOPEC conference at the end of the year has been sent. The reason why we sent it early, because we have asked in that letter that when the programming committees sit, they must make sure that during that time there are no sittings, because we want all members of the public accounts committees to be in Durban in October. And if there are programs or some of them might not have quorums because members won't be there. Chair, let me stop there. Those are the things that I thought I should indicate for now from what you asked me to do. Unless there are other things that honorable members want to find out about SAPEC, I'm willing to respond to that. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Jensek. Honorable members, there was the presentation that was done by the Jensek on issues of SAPEC and also the conferences that are going to be held. Can I get an indication of members who want to ask questions? And also bearing in mind that at the end of the meeting, we'll also be taking resolution on the matters that has been raised. I see Honorable Maseko.
Okay, thank you.
You're breaking up, Honorable Maseko. I don't know whether is it on my side. Can you hear the Honorable, or it's my?
No, she's breaking up, Chair. She's breaking
Okay.
up.
Honorable Maseko? Seem to have lost there completely now.
Yeah, I
There
don't
you-
know what's happening.
No, you're back now. You're back now.
Okay, I'm saying thank you very much for the chair to come and talk to us and to address this issue. And I think that it was important that he comes to talk to us. But one thing that I'm a little bit concerned about, and I've been vocal about this, I tend to believe you, Chairperson of WCPP, you talk to Member Kanyile, is the issue of the election was 2020. And surely one of the important things for the running of this organization is the membership fees. Because in the Constitution, it's clear that if you don't pay that membership, that means you cannot be, that province cannot be in that association. Now, we are at the era of the bank statement will tell you who paid, who didn't pay. And that, as I listen to you, is a problem that you couldn't access the accounts as the elected executive. But there are minutes that the Constitution and the minutes that talk to that the elected are the ones that have to be signatories for the accounts. That I'm getting lost there, why that didn't happen immediately. And surely we have 365 days on a year to make those changes. And also, what I'm worried about is the audit company that was appointed to do auditing. Do we have a CFO or a person that is responsible for the funds, for the payments and everything that has to do with the account for this association? Because I'm wondering that if we have to pay for the meetings that we did have and any other thing, activities that was involving the money, who was signing for that? Because much as you didn't have the access of the accounts, we went to Joburg for the meeting. There were activities that were happening, and surely the money was being debited from the account for those activities of the association. It wasn't redundant. So at that point in time, who was responsible to make sure that they pay that person couldn't draw out the statement to check what is it that is happening? And if now you still wait for audit company to come and talk to or try to draw out to check which provinces haven't paid their membership, which still have to pay, and for how many years, it's worrisome because that means the policy or the constitution of this association, we have defaulted, or there's a possibility that we have defaulted for years. It might be, and I'm making an example, a chairperson, Kanyile is a chairperson, but Gauteng hasn't paid that membership for about 4 years, of which we shouldn't have elected Kanyile to be the chairperson because was not a member of that association due to non-payment of the membership. Now it's a ripple effect of the falls after falls after falls. Now it comes back also to the Auditor General, that how do we hold the SAPEC accountable if really we are at the stage where we are, but we are the same organization that have to look at the best running methods of the public accounts within this country, let alone that we have to host the SAPEC, but our house is not in order at all. And it doesn't look like it will be in order if we still carry the papers that can still be lost while we send the emails when we do the requisition. I tend to believe we were not doing the requisition using the receipt books. And why that cannot be traced, why there's no memory in the computers or the laptops of all the laptops, also the computers, they got lost. So it's a little bit concerned that, I'm sorry, it doesn't make sense. A lot of things, the more you talk, it didn't make sense to me that why we can't have some of the records on the electronic devices. It's only the papers that got lost when there was a movement of the offices. And the decisions that are ad hoc or decisions are worrisome, Chair. So I'm sorry about that, but it really, we need to look deep into this, that the AG has to be involved also. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Maseko. Jensek, it looked like there's only one question really that is being asked. I would like you to be able to respond.
Yeah, Chair, thank you very much, the honorable member. Let me say it up front that the concern that our systems or our books are not in order is a genuine concern. But it's also more worrying because we are a public accounts committee, as the member has rightfully said, who are holding departments of government, organs of state accountable, but we ourselves are unable to keep our records straight. That's a genuine concern. It is a concern that has really made us to take certain steps. Number one, when we came in as the current executive, let me say the executive committee that was elected in 2020, we discovered that SAPEC didn't have financial policy. What we're told is that they are using the financial policy of the office of the AG because the secretariat was housed in the office of the AG. We saw that as a problem. We started the process of developing our own finance policy, which we completed just before the AGM last year. And then we agreed that we can't adopt it. Let it be adopted by the new executive committee. So that was one of the things. The other thing, Chair, that is important to indicate is that we must just bear in mind. Remember when we came in 2020, it was during the time of COVID. That's why our meeting was held virtually. Subsequent to that, we did have a meeting. Remember, it's right. It was the Council of Delegates, which was held in October, but with restricted numbers because COVID had restrictions. But subsequent to that, there were no much activities. Most meetings were held virtually, so there was no spending of anything because meetings were virtual. Except, as I say, the Council of Delegates, this is what happens, that we then engaged the Office of the AG and said, we are supposed to have this Council of Delegates, it's important, can you help us? So they assisted us by paying for that venue on our behalf, with the understanding that we will, as soon as we have access to the account, we'll refund them, which is what we did. There was another problem also. There was another account that needed to be paid, the SARS account. That one created problems because we couldn't pay it from somewhere else. So that's why we ended up nearly having a problem with SARS. But by the time when we immediately had an access to the account, which was March last year, we then finalized the matters with SARS, and SARS understood the problems that we're going through. So the member is correct that there were some meetings that were held, but most meetings were held virtually. We started having really fully fledged meetings mainly last year in March. The first one was there in Cape Town that we held there. So we've been having activities there. One of the things I want to also emphasize is that from the time we came into office until the end of March last year, the 10th of March last year, that account was dormant. Because we didn't have access, we couldn't make any payments. There was nothing. The only thing that we know was coming through were subscription fees, because later when we got access to the bank accounts, we realized that there were legislatures that were paying subscription fees. So that's why the auditors are going to find it easy to audit 2020, 2021, 2020, because the account basically was dormant. There wasn't much movement. So that's why we think that it won't take them long to audit those. But to come back to the issue about how then are people elected if you don't have information on affiliation fees? That's why when in 2019, after elections in 2019, the first meeting that was held was it was not convened by us because we were new. It was convened by the previous leadership. But they were no longer members of any legislature. So they called because they wanted to assist us on how do we move forward. It was in Johannesburg. At that meeting, there was an agreement on how we should go forward. Then there was an interim structure that was established just to take us to the elective meeting, which was held in August. So at that meeting in August, the question arose about the affiliation fees, but we couldn't have access. So the question was, what do we do? Do we remain and not have the executive committee until we get access? How do we get access if we don't have executive committee? So it was an agreement that let's elect it, but on the basis that it's an elective meeting. We didn't call it an AGM deliberately for that, because the constitution of SAPEC makes provision that if there's no leadership, the Speaker of the National Assembly should convene the meeting where then all those processes will take place. So that's how it was convened, that meeting. And the people who were elected then were given that mandate, but as I explained, what the problems are. That's why the AGM last year said it's going to be difficult for us to move if we don't have that information. So we're confident that by the time we convene the special AGM as instructed last year in August, we would be having all that information. One, the financial statements will be ready. What we are trying to sort out now, just for that I can be upfront about it, is to ensure that we also audit 2023. The bigger problem, like I indicated, the companies we're using are too expensive. The executive committee has noted that and said that because we want to finalize these matters, let's give them further mandate, but we must start the process of getting other firms that are more reasonable. But because our account is not a lot, I mean, as I speak to you now, in our account, you don't even more, the amount we have is just above 300 million rand. We've got two accounts. There's the current account, and I think the other is a call account. To put together, it's not even more than it's not even 5 million rand, it's less than that. So you can't then be paying a lot of money for audit of such a small account, which is a problem. So I thought I should just indicate that the leadership has said that we must look at that, so that by the time we call the special conference, it must then be, especially it must be the one that takes a decision on who must be our new auditors, because that's the constitution. The constitution says is the conference that decides on the auditors. Yeah, I think I have. Okay, let me just clarify the question of the Auditor General, because it was an issue at our last conference. Remember, the Auditor General stopped supporting APEC in 2018 because that's when the Speakers Forum took the decision. So the accounts for 2018 didn't have problems. The AG had set up a team of about 4 or 5 staff members from her office, or at the time it was the late Magwetu. From his office, he had set up a team of people who were supporting APEC. That was all they were doing. But when the decision was taken, those people had to be moved to other positions. So there was no secretariat. So whatever documentation that came after that, that's where the problems came. And now you ask the question is asked, how are they kept and all that? Those are the things we are asking ourselves. We were waiting for the audit to come out so that the auditors can clearly outline, because we know which are there were only 2 what do you call them, 2 amounts that were questionable, as in the information was not there, but whether they are substantive or material such way that it will give us, it's another thing. So we wait for the audit to come, and then after that we'll then be able to explain to all members. We are aware that the annual general meeting last year took a decision that there must be a forensic investigation, but you can't do a forensic investigation until you've got facts on your hand. So when we've got that, the determination must then be taken whether there's going to be forensic investigation or not. So I thought I should just explain those so that other members can understand that the office of the AG, until that time, there were no problems. It's only after that the problems came in. And because the secretariat was up and down, like there was no secretariat basically. It was in space, and it could possible that some of the things were done in a different way, which is a problem. So that's why we have to investigate what happened, why things were not done proper, so that you give a proper report based on facts. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Jensek. I see Honorable Maseko would like to make a follow-up. I'm also mindful of the time constraint, but because of the significance of the matter, because we still got 2 other departments as well that we must still engage with. Honorable Maseko.
No, Chair, I'm not going to do the follow-up. Thank you very much, and I would love to really again thank Mr. Kanyelo for coming to us, and also just to say it on record that it would have been wonderful to see our treasurer that we elected being the one talking to us about our finances. So that is what will be more appreciated. But other thing, Chair, for executive is to look at the issue of engaging the speakers forum to maybe go back to the system to negotiate with the Auditor General, to go back to the system that was working before. Because presently the system that we have it's not working for us. So that is what I will recommend from WCPP, that we do that. Chair, without wasting your time, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Maseko. I think that's a very good point to note for resolution when we are going to further deliberate on the matter towards the end of the meeting. Now, With no further questions, therefore, honorable members, let me make use of this opportunity to thank the General Secretary, Honorable Sopkaile Kanyile, for making the time when we made the call to come and actually brief us in person about some of the issues and some of the questions we had surrounding the matters of SAPEC. It also goes to show that when it comes to accountability, there are no holy cows. Even Honorable Kaile was able to come and be able to come in front of us and answer some of the difficult questions that we had around the matters of SAPEC. So now, honorable members, having said that, and thank the honorable for coming, and then also he did indicate that he have to leave and attend to other issues. So we'll definitely gladly release him to leave. And I want us now to move to the next item on the agenda, which is the Department of Education.
Thank you,
Thank you
Chair.
very,
Bye-bye, thanks.
thank you very much, Jensek. The Department of Education. Let me make use of the opportunity, honorable members, to welcome the department led by the Honorable Minister Menir and also the HOD. Without any much ado, I'm going to ask the department led by the Minister. Honorable Minister, are there any issues that you'd like to raise first, or we are going to move straight to the presentation?
Thank you, Chair. It's a pleasure, obviously, for the department to appear before SCOPA on the items on the agenda. I know that SCOPA likes to get down to business, and the department stands ready to brief you and to take any questions. Thank you,
Yes.
Chair. And through you, if I
thank
could
you.
hand over to the HOD.
Thank you very much, Minister. HOD.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you, Minister. Good morning to the members. Good morning to the AG and all the other people on the line. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, we were asked to prepare a presentation in 3 parts. The first part being on how we can move to a clean audit. The second part on section on the NSNP, spend and impact of the NSNP and in comparison with other provinces. And the third part, how the department and AJSA will deal with the audit findings in order to mitigate a future recurrence of the unqualified audit outcome with findings. So, Chairperson, with your permission, the presentation is going to be done by Mr. Eli, our CFO. We have in the meeting all our DDGs and the Chief Director responsible for data management and making sure all our indicators are in order. So we have the right people in the room from the department. I would like to hand over to with your permission, to Mr. Eli to do the presentation, please, Chairperson, if that is okay. Thank you.
No problem, HOD. Mr. Eli.
Yeah. Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning to honourable members of SCOPA and to my Minister and HOD and other colleagues. All protocol observed. Chair, I know the presentation was sent to Dustin, but I will screen the presentation now.
Yes, please.
Chairperson, can I have an indication whether you can see the presentation?
Yes. Thank
Okay.
you very much, Mr.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. So we can then carry on. So, Chairperson, as indicated by my HOD, that the presentation is in 3 parts, and I will deal with that as well. And then in terms of resolutions, we will talk to each one of these aspects as well, Chairperson. Just, Chairperson, just in terms of briefing again, Chairperson. So a clean audit is categorized as an unqualified audit with no findings, and then a financially unqualified audit, which is in our case is an unqualified or audit with findings, which in our case deals with performance information. And Chairperson, I'm not going to go into the issue about qualified audit, which results in a modified opinion as well. But those are just in terms of categories, Chairperson. So as you know, the department finds itself in the middle category, where it's financially unqualified, but it has findings regarding performance objectives as well in that regard, performance reporting. So I'll move on to that. So for the past 3 years, we had financially unqualified audit Chairperson. Just indication around that, and then also around performance objectives, we had findings in those 3 years as well that prevented us from obtaining a totally clean audit in that regard. Then, Chairperson, as my HOD indicated, that one of the resolutions is that we demonstrate and brief the committee on how the department can move towards and obtain a clean audit outcome. So I'll just give the committee those steps that we followed in that regard. So Chairperson, in terms of moving towards a clean audit, we've had workshops with all staff, with key staff, and part of that was to focus on accountability, so make sure that the roles and responsibilities clearly defined, and responsible staff members know what they have to do in that regard. And there's no confusion when it comes to reporting. Then also the elevation of the function of performance reporting, that now the HOD is asked that comes on a quarterly basis to our top management meeting, which basically is all the DDGs, the SG, and then also the chief directors. They are members of that committee, and we go through the quarterly performance reporting there and all the challenges around it as well. Part of that meeting is also internal control, that also briefs the committee in terms of any particular findings and still concerns in that regard as well. Part of this process in terms of moving towards a clean audit is to also look at improved procedures and processes, because that's where the AG always had findings in that regard. So which means we had to review standard operating procedures and our business processes as well, just to make sure that whatever the findings in the past is, that we give attention to that, and that can be clearly defined as well, Chairperson. Again, Chairperson, I've spoken about increased oversight. So what we mean by that is it does, go to our audit committee. Our audit committee is aware of some of the findings in that regard or the past weaknesses, and they ask particular questions in that regard, what's been happening there in terms of financial management improvement plan as well. Chairperson, I've spoken about staff training, which is an ongoing matter, and upskilling in terms of gaining a greater understanding of some of the implications and the process we're looking at in the year as well. And in some cases, we've taken more staff on board, and that's just to increase the scope of the work we have to do in terms of oversight and insight as well. And then the last thing we've done also, Chairperson, we've looked at stakeholder support. Apart from the report of the AG, we also in the past had internal audit in that realm, but also, as I indicated, the ongoing support of internal control unit within the department as well. Based on the audit findings in the past, we've now decided to also consult with the Department of the Premier to provide assistance in that regard as well, Chairperson, so that we, that our process that we're looking at and what we provide to the Auditor General, that everything there in terms of evidence-based, it is covered, and we look at all the angles in that regard as well, Chairperson. Then, Chairperson, if I can move on to the next resolution, and that deals with how the department and the AGSA will deal with the audit findings in order to mitigate a future recurrence of unqualified audit outcomes with findings. Obviously, Chairperson, I will only speak on behalf of the department. I have noticed that the Auditor General is in the meeting, so they'll probably brief the committee also from their perspective of how they have dealt with the department and how they see things going forward. Chairperson, so if I go into my next slide. So just Chairperson, obviously part of the roadmap in terms of improvement is obviously ongoing monitoring as well. So again, as I indicated, that performance indicators are monitored quarterly through the department, but that gets again highlighted at what we call our top management meeting, where we deal with these particular matters. The performance indicators are part of the government departmental risk register by the mere fact that part of the department's risk register is obviously to maintain a good audit outcomes. So there's always a focus on that in the discussions of how we can mitigate particular risk that might arise regarding performance objectives. Then internal audit follow-ups on previous audit findings. I've indicated that our internal control unit within the department, they do follow-ups on that regard and then report to the audit committee. They also report to the accounting officer and also to the top management as well, as those areas that still requires attention or not. Then we've also had a strengthened review of the indicators itself. Chairperson, in the past, based on the AG reports and what's also contained in the audit report, there was always indications that some of the indicators are not always well defined, or it's vague in that regard. So we had to, also with the assistance of the Department of the Premier, look at those indicators and see how we can more better define those indicators as well. Then the last minute was to mitigate by collecting evidence to also deal with risk mitigation there as well. So Chairperson, the issue always is about evidence collection, given the fact that some of the evidence also are at school level. So in terms of scope, the department obviously faces many risks in that regard, but it was also looking at that process and how we collect that information and then do provide it to the Auditor General when they do come and do the audit as well. As you know, Chairperson, the Auditor General is currently busy with the department. We had to submit our financials by the end of May, which we've done. So the Auditor General does have our financials as well as the performance reporting as well, or the annual performance report. They are in possession of that as well. And then also, as I indicated to Chairperson, as part of the improvement, the performance targets were submitted to our audit committee, and they do on a quarterly basis. They look at that in terms of how the department is doing, whether it's meeting those objectives or not, and any risk relating to what possibly could arise from that particular process as well, Chairperson. So, Chairperson, so that's as far as that resolution is concerned. And then, I will move now on to my the last resolution from the committee that had to deal with the spend and impact on the National School Nutrition Program. That's what NSNP stand for, including how the other provinces in Africa spend and report on the impact of this program. Chairperson, just to say that the NSNP program is a conditional grant. It is governed by Division of Revenue Act, which means there's a custodian in this regard, and the custodian of this grant is the Department of Basic Education. We report on a regular basis to them, and they monitor compliance around this particular grant as well in terms of spending. Then in terms of the grant, there's a set menu as well. So that's specified in the grant framework as well. You know, what the menus in a particular school should look like and what we feed learners on a daily basis. So, Chairperson, from the slide presentation, as I said previously, Dustin did distribute this. We did distribute this presentation to Dustin. So the committee members, I assume that the committee members had insight into this presentation. So if you look at the last row, you will see that the Western Cape, for the period under review, the last year, had spent about 451 million rand for the year, and against the budget and of the same amount. So we spend about 100% of the grant, Chairperson, and you can see we can't talk for the other provinces, but you can see from the slide presentation the percentage of expenditure on other provinces as well. That's quite a big grant. I think in total is about 8.5 billion rand. But that grant, as I said, it is administered by Department of Basic Education, and they manage this at the national level as well. Chairperson, if I can move on. So just to say, in terms of the question that the committee has asked, there is currently no empirical evidence or study conducted to see the impact of NSNP. However, what we've noticed in our province, there's a dire need to feed more learners. Just to say, Chairperson, also that in terms of the conditions of the grant is basically limited to national quintiles 1. But we have we have obtained concession from DBE now for the past number of years now, that we can also feed learners in quintile 4 and 5 as well. So but again, Chairperson, in terms of impact, I think we know that you can't teach a hungry child. So I think just based on that particular notion, I think the grant does have an impact, in terms of, especially we're talking about young children here that's still growing. Their brains need, or their brain functioning is dependent on the nutrition they receive. And so that's why the grant is there to deal with that particular matter as well. So on a daily basis, Chair, we have just under 200 school days. We feed about 518,387 learners are fed on a daily basis. And it's just under 200 school days as well. In this province, we also serve those learners with a breakfast as well, so they get 2 meals per day. So that is we're one of the first provinces to run a pilot on behalf of DBE as well with the breakfast. So that's been going for the past 3 years or so, very successfully, in those schools that qualify for the nutrition program. But what we've noticed, Chairperson, since last year, we've also seen an increase in learner numbers from March last year to May this year as well. So we are feeding more learners. Just to say, Chairperson, just on the side as well, just from a budget perspective, DBE has given additional funding for the current year under review for the Provincial grant, given the inflation increases, aspects around the food inflation, as you know, Chairperson, but also the province has given from the equitable share money also additional funding to deal with the increased learner numbers that we're experiencing in this province as well. So that's just in terms of just another aspect relating to the grant funding as well. Then, Chairperson, lastly, in my last slide, we have noticed improved attendance in terms of learner attendance at school level, punctuality, and then also well-being as well, especially in the foundation phase, and then also, higher learner retention is a credit to this particular program as well, because learners then come to school because in some cases this is the only meal they get for the day as well. Then the introduction of chicken livers into the NSME program has also increased the recommended dietary allowance as well. The challenge with NSNP is obviously the aspect about protein into the diet, and especially for the young learners in terms of brain development. So chicken livers plays quite an important role there as far as brain development is concerned, but also to deal with the protein part of the diet is concerned. So, Chairperson, that's just in terms of the briefing to the committee around the NSNP program. Chairperson, in my last slide, we will take comments and questions at this particular instance. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ala, for such a very comprehensive and a clear presentation. But in this regard, honorable members, I'm also going to allow the Auditor General, if there's any points maybe that they would like to raise, as you know that we've also included them to be part of this meeting to deal with the issues and the challenges in the Department of Education. AG?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. So we did prepare something from our side as well to take the committee through. I've got with me the senior manager on the audit, Lutando, so he'll then take us through it from our side. No? Thank you.
Thanks.
Good morning, Chair and honorable members, including HESA officials, as well as the department officials. I've requested my colleague Zine to project the presentation. Basically, Chair, you'll notice that it's almost similar to the one that have been actually presented by the department. So I'll take note on certain areas that the department has already alluded to. So, Chair, one of the areas that we fundamentally requested relating to how the department can be able to move to unqualified opinion and no audit findings. So we've actually outlined certain points that most of the time when we do our audit, we always emphasize and also present to the department to improve their internal controls in the sphere of managing annual financial statements, performance reporting, as well as compliance with applicable laws and regulations. So we've actually noted that in the first paragraph there, that the department has been receiving unqualified audit findings, with findings on particularly on the performance information. We've actually indicated that those are fundamental areas that we feel they should basically invest a lot of resources to be able to improve their daily monitoring controls. And we've noted that based on the first bulletin point that we've actually outlined on this document, that one of the matters that we actually want them to implement, develop standard operating procedures that are detailed enough to be linked to the roles and responsibilities of the employees that are responsible to collate, review, and report on performance information. And we specify that they should be linked to indicator descriptive manual and the required supporting documentation. Furthermore, we indicated that each and every when they are required to develop action plans to address audit findings that have been actually identified during external audit period as well as the internal audit period, that they need to emphasize more to improve the accountability process in respect to that by consistently monitoring and address those internal control deficiencies that have been identified. We further indicated that the leadership in management should enhance the performance management and reporting process to ensure that sufficient reviews are in place to prevent or detect and correct errors that create inconsistencies. We further indicated that an increased effort should be made to monitor performance against the annual target during the internal quarterly monitoring. The performance information should be reviewed against the technical indicator description and for reliability purposes. We indicated that an in-year detailed review will aid the reviews performed during the annual reporting period and ensure the information provided for audit is consistent with the plan indicated and free from material errors. We further indicated that the department should continue to maintain financial reporting and compliance controls to ensure that they consistently report appropriately in each and every required audit period. As indicated above, Chair, that those areas are not a big concern with respect to the department. However, it's quite imperative that they maintain those strong controls to ensure that they do not actually regress in those particular areas. 3.2, Chair, it's similar to what have been presented by the CFO in relating to the actual expenditure of the department in respect to that particular grant, which is National School Nutrition Program. So I don't think I need to re-emphasize it, as is actually appropriately reported in detail to the members. Even the other one, we're comparing with other provinces that have been actually been presented by the CFO of the department. Another aspect that was actually requested is to make a comparison of the findings with other provinces. So, Chair, what we actually did is that in the interest of ensuring that we report the information that is already on public sorry, Zine, please don't go. Can you go up a little bit? Okay, again, thank you. No, go down. I want to go to the paragraph below the table. Okay, those paragraphs are below the table and before 3.3, we're basically re-emphasizing what have actually been reported through our general reporting that is done by AG, which is publicly available for consumption, so that we can ensure that we're transparent with the information that can also be available if anyone wants to go and reference to. So we've made a reference to one of on page 84, which we've actually specified an example of the Free State Provincial Education Department, where we indicated that they did not achieve their targets in respect to NSNP program, which is where 90% of the learners of the schools we visited did not receive the meals on the day they were required to attend schooling during COVID-19. And also at 50% of the schools we visited, learners did not receive meals that met their daily recommended nutritional requirement. Also, in the GR, we further reported in respect to Western Cape Provincial Education Department, where we've actually outlined that during our school visits in some of the schools, we've actually identified that there were challenges in respect of maintaining complete and accurate monthly stock registered, and also whereby we identified that some of the stock that are kept in storerooms were expired, and also not all the food was appropriately stored by the required official to maintain those processes. So we indicated further that the results of that in some cases, this resulted to wastage of the food, and also result to the lack of balanced meal, and learners may not always receive meals as intended. So basically indicated that this greatly affected the program's purpose of serving a balanced meal to boost the concentration of learners and ensuring that the teachers get the maximum out of the available teaching time. So all that kind of information there have been actually presented to the official of the department as the members of the public. It's not the new information that we came through. It's based on the prior audit matter that we've identified during the 21-22 audit period. Also, performance reporting were reliable compared to 50% in the current year. However, this was only achieved after the correction of material
while they audit the information of the department. But yeah, just to take you a little bit back, the AG and the department did mention that the annual financial statements and the annual performance report was submitted on the 31st of May, because that's the deadline. And what has happened is that the audit committee has had a good review of that prior to submission and provided the input in order to make sure there's some compliance, you know, on the matters or on the report. As far as the predetermined objective elements is concerned, indicators, evidence is being
for that information and those remarks. I just want to check from honorable members. Are there any questions that the honorable members would like to ask? I see Honorable America. Let me check in the list quickly. I see, there's Honorable Maseko, Honorable America, and Honorable Seleku in that order.
Thank you very much, Chair. And again, I just want to thank the department and Minister Maynir for briefing us and also indicating the way forward in addressing this issue. I'm just going to ask one or two questions, Chair, through you. I want to find out, because one option now in my head for them to have this performance objectives on moving towards the clean audit, what is it that they also didn't help with the unemployment, and now is the load shedding, of which the load shedding, there are times that those schools that are in a quintal where there's no feeding, you might find that the parents have lost the jobs and now the kids, they don't have the food. Do we have the systems in place in the department, and not the systems per se, but the reserve of if there's a need from a school that will need now after all this load shedding and the COVID that they will need or apply for the feeding? Do you have a reserve to be able to attend to that, or it will also be a challenge for the department if that can be the case? And looking at the way forward, Chair, with the let's say we have a total blackout of what will be the measures in place and the financial burden that will be attached to that from the department, if that can be the case that in the schools, what will happen if that might happen? Is there any reserve of monetary reserves, or what is it that can happen in that case if it might happen, Chair? I think I'm clear in trying to ask that question for it to make sense to the department. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable America.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for the presentation. It is clear to me that I have a few questions, Chairperson, and those are as follows. That to Mr. Eli, the measures that were put in place where the roles and responsibilities were clearly identified and the individuals were identified in terms of carrying out those roles and responsibilities. I would like to know whether there is those roles and responsibilities are they embraced by those individuals that will assist us in carrying out their roles and responsibilities efficiently and effectively. Then secondly, Chairperson, for the Audit Committee, issues of internal control it's always a matter of that needs to be sort of enhanced and developed, and changing environment all the time with the changing circumstances. In their assessment, do they believe that the internal controls were additionally put in place to address the issues that were raised? Are they adequate? Have they been sort of implemented adequately? Or are there any other areas of serious concern that still needs to be addressed? And then thirdly, Chairperson, to the department, it is no doubt that the National School Nutrition Program has a meaningful and positive impact on the educational outcomes. In the grant allocation to the Western Cape that would cater for this growing need that develops annually due to this increase in learner numbers that require this kind of service. In other words, Chairperson, is the money following the learners? So if that is not the case, or if it is the case, will we be able to maintain delivery, the levels of delivery of service, and that is
been subjected to load shedding in a few years? Has there been any impact in terms of load shedding on the schedule of the feeding scheme at the school? What mitigating factors, or what mitigating measures has been put in place to make sure that load shedding does not actually impact on the kids having their daily breakfast on a daily basis? That's the first question, Chair. And the second question, Chair, would be in terms of one would do actually get the food, and secondly, link it to that, and that the kind of food that they are getting is food that will actually assist them into concentrating when they are being, when they are in class learning, and that is not just food for the sake of getting food, but it's food of substance and food that can sustain them, for the duration of the school hours. And would see that it has been 3 consistent years that the department has been getting an unqualified audit with findings. And for me, it's difficult to check whether would the departments, would the AG say today that from the first audit in terms of the 3 financial years, has there been any improvements in terms of the outcomes? Just an example, if the first financial year there was 10 issues that were identified and there was an audit plan dealing with those issues, one would expect in the second year that it will decrease, and then ultimately it will lead to getting a clean audit. One, I would want to know whether there is any, progress made in terms of the issues that has been identified in the previous financial years for the department to actually get its ultimate goal of getting a clean audit. And lastly, Chair, the fact that the department has been not getting a clean audit, has it any impact on the department regarding the menu? Raising this out of a practical experience I've seen in one school, which I'm not going to mention its name. I arrived at a time when there was actually feeding, where the children were eating, and I only noticed that. I also noticed they were eating beans and mealies, and just that. So I just wanted to check, and I see now there seems to be going to be some compulsory requirement for chicken livers, which I regard them as very, very nutritional as well. So I just wanted to check whether is there a certain set menu that is compulsory so that it can actually give a balanced diet to the student, because sometimes it's no use just filling up the stomach of the learners, but then while the filling of the stomach has got no nutritional value, So I welcome the idea that there seems to be going to be a compulsory requirement, because I've seen that in the presentation of chicken liver. So I wanted to check, just to emphasize on Honorable Seleko's question, that the menu, is there a set menu? Because when I asked the principal said, no, look, on certain days we give them this food, on other days we give them this food, So, but I just want to check from the department side, is there a prescribed menu for that? And then my other question is that I noticed on the AG's presentation, I think it was on 3.3, paragraph 3.3, because we don't have the presentation with us. If it can please be sent, that there is a sentence that said that some of the departments are not replying on some of the questions that were asked. And then I see also there was also Western Cape is also one of those provinces that were listed. I think there were about 4, if not 5 provinces. And I see the Western Cape is also one of those. Maybe if you can get an indication as to why would they not respond, what was the reason for no replies. But other than that, that's all from my side, and I'm going to hand over to the
Thank you, Chairperson. If I could ask Brent Walters and the team to respond in the first instance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Minister.
Sorry, thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you very much, Minister. So I'm going to ask my team to assist with the answers, but may I just, the question broadly can be grouped into 2 categories. I think the one is just about what doing that with every person who's involved, right down to who's actually has to collect the data and where it must go and so on. And then every quarter, Mr. De Vega feeds back to the department at the level of detail, each indicator, a performance on that indicator, what is outstanding on that indicator. And we've done that for the whole year on a quarterly basis. So obviously that question about whether we will see any movement, we can't answer that. All I can say is, Chairperson, we can't answer it because the AG will decide. But all I can say is we have put in a lot of effort. And I think Ms. Cullen, she's aware that she and her team, that we have actually put in a lot of effort to take seriously many of the things that the AG has actually put at our door. And so what we believe we have presented for the current year is a set of accurate statements. Now, obviously, Chairperson, I think you appreciate, question has been asked. We operate in 1,500 schools and we have 1.1 million learners, and the system is very dispersed and uneven and so on. And of course, in this thing of performance indicators, you're only as good as the weakest link. And so we have pushed that into the system through our districts, through meetings with people inside the districts. And Chair, we'll see whether that has the necessary results when we get our findings, and we'll see how we respond in relation to those findings. But certainly there is, on the control environment, Mr. Eli may want to talk about some of the internal controls that we also have introduced, and Mr. De Vega can perhaps just talk in relation to some of the more technical things that we have done to make sure that we are complying with whatever was asked of us. So to answer the question about whether we will see improved audit outcome, Chairperson, we believe that we put in the effort. I think only the AG will be able to pronounce eventually whether we'll see improved audit outcome or not, but we think we put in the effort to get that enhanced audit outcome, and let's hope that goes that way. Then maybe to just perhaps comment on the question of the questions about the sample basis. I want to talk about the sample basis. The AG will know that, because you see we feeding in 1,038 schools, and then that general report that was shown on the feeding scheme is based on, I think, a sample of 18 to 20 of our schools. One of the enhancements I've asked for is that we do look at the basis of sampling. Just by some stroke of fate, I guess, we seem to have this, indicate, if that is correct, that we didn't reply to questions, because I would find that very surprising, since we do actually respond to everything that the AG sends to us. Sometimes I don't agree with our answer, Chair, it's a different matter, but we would reply to the questions that the AG asks. But can I perhaps just ask maybe Mr. De Vega and a few others to come in and try and add to the answers? Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, honourable members, and basically in terms of the AOPOs, or the audit of performance outcomes, the WCD has strengthened our posture in terms of putting systems in place, ensuring that the critical touch points that were missing previously, that those gaps, or as Honourable Masheka would call it, loopholes, have been addressed. So we identified where the gaps were. In terms of the interpretation of the technical indicated and we use the internal control or amendment system, where we made those course corrected where they were allowed us to course correct our for 23-24, as well as the 22-23 APP. In terms of collection of data, we put together a task team, which we call the cross-functional team, made with researchers, data analysts, as well as your strategic people. We've also engaged the .P and DPME, as well as DBE, on a lot of our processes. And not only we went to the TOPCO, but also to the audit committee for reporting and to ensure that we are on track, from where every reporting information that we received or reported information we received, we actually aligned that to the evidence that supports that for every indicator that we had in our process. And in terms of timelines, we've started this process immediately after receiving the management report, and course corrected a lot of the issues highlighted by the AG, but more importantly, looking at best practice in terms of how to address all of these. And starting right at the top with the HOD assigning roles and responsibilities for each indicator manager to, he basically went through every indicator and ascribed it to a particular individual that takes full responsibility. And then the cross-functional team would work very closely with each indicator manager, unpacking the indicator as well as the technical indicator data set, what the evidence look like, when this evidence needs to be submitted, and what the process is. So in terms of the culture of the organization, in terms of being data-driven, evidence-led, we've now enhanced that culture to another level where we've got senior managers understanding the entire process end to end, and contribute to ensuring that what we submit to as part of our quarterly performance reporting as well as our annual performance report is credible. And I think, as I mentioned right at the start, our posture in terms of AOPO has been strengthened as a consequence of the level of accountability and competence that we've managed to improve within the organization. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. De Vega. Mr. Eli, anything else on the AG portion of the program before we go to Mr. Meyer and Dr. Naika on the NSMP? Is there anything else we may have left out, Mr. Eli?
Yeah. Thank you, HOD. Just one question asked by Mr. America around the funding issue. So, Chairperson, that's obviously a provincial treasury aspect, but not to go into the mechanisms of equitable share. So again, as I said in my presentation, the NSMP program is a conditional grant. That grant and the division of that is governed by Department of Basic Education and National Department of Basic Education. They decide which provinces gets what portion. They have given us additional funding, which relates to increase for inflationary increases. But as you know, Chairperson, we are in a steel environment, so they gave minimum funding must go to which province. Chairperson, there is a lag. I think I said we only a receiver of that funding. We're not the kind of, we basically get the funding we get, and then we also then have to, it's up to the department to mitigate whatever risk comes its way, whether that's in terms of increased learner numbers or increase, because we do central procurement, increase pricing as far as food inflation is concerned. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Eli. Chairperson, with your permission, we'll ask Mr. Meyer to come in now. And if Dr. Naika needs to support, then he can. Mr. Meyer, on the feeding scheme. Thank you.
Thank you very much, HOD. Good morning, parliamentarians and other officials. Just in terms of the question and other officials, just in terms of the question by Member America, yes, as Mr. Eli has explained, the budget is increased in terms of food inflationary pricing. And the learner numbers, I think, is something that you could perhaps take up at national level. But further to say that we have extended an additional bid to our provincial treasury, who then granted us an additional 61 million for NSNP, which we will also use within our program to supplement the 496 million that we received for the NSNP grant. The second question asked by the member in terms of the expired stock, there is a stock control measures in place at the schools, but it says that first in, first out approach is used. Food that is received first will be used first, and that is last. But we have found in some cases that schools are left with certain surpluses at the end of a period, And that then, causes a bit of confusion when others come in and inspect stock and see stock that is very late. There is a process where old stock should be returned to the supplier in place, and the schools are always encouraged to do so. Then, in terms of load shedding, Member Salelo, yes, we use gas to prepare the meals, and therefore we are unaffected by ESCOM downtime, etc. Just to also say that all our food handlers are trained in gas safety. Each facility needs to apply for a gas certificate as well, which is quite a costly exercise. And we then also support the schools to do that, because we need to ensure the safety of staff within those particular kitchens. For example, the gas cages are outside of the building, not within the same room, etc. Then, in terms of Member Isaac's question, yes, there is a prescribed menu that must be followed. We serve breakfast and lunch, and there's always a very clear balance between protein and carbohydrate. There will always be a protein, whether it's either the tin fish that we provide, chicken livers, or also soya, and then also the various carbohydrates that we offer. We also offer a fruit with meals as well on certain days, and that is to maintain a balanced diet for learners, and not just feeding them stuff, but feeding them nutritional meal that is able to address the daily requirements in terms of vitamins for learners. So as the HOD has indicated, we have over 1,038 schools that feed on a daily basis, in excess of 500,000 learners that benefit from this exercise. And yes, the 20 schools were sampled where some issues were found. We have addressed those issues and taken them very seriously. And we have gone out and issued various circulars, as well as have into the schools via our representatives in each of the district offices. We have NSNP officials who work at the district level, who are able to visit schools within their districts on a regular basis to ensure that the meals that we provide are of a very high standard, and that learners benefit from this particular program. Thank you, HOD. I hope I've covered all the questions that were asked. Thank you.
Chairperson, can we hand back to you if there are any gaps? I think that is our response to the various questions that have been asked. We've tried to answer as many questions as possible. We think we've answered the questions, but maybe we missed one or two, Chairperson. I see Chairperson, let me hand back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, HOD. Before I give Honorable Maseko, can I just check if the AG would like to respond on some of the issues?
I would ask Lutando to address the question around the audit outcome and the progress, the journey that we've been on with the department, together with maybe just clarifying for Chair what section 3.3 said in our presentation, and then he'll hand over back to me. Thank you.
Representative of the prior audit outcomes to determine whether there was improvement in those past 3 years. So basically, we'll start from 1920 financial period. The department was basically received unqualified audit opinion with findings on AOPO. In that particular year, there was basically material findings on PPM 216, which is percentage of learners provided required textbooks in all grades and in all subjects per annum. And also basically, we indicated that the planned target of 99.8% within schedule was not specific, and clearly then percent was reported against a target of 60% in the annual performance report. However, the supporting evidence provided materially differed from the reported achievement. So the matter there was basically relating to reliability of the evidence that was presented to support from the prior, which is 1920 to 2021 financial period. In 21-22, we reported on POY 202 KPI, which is percentage of learners retained in the school system from grade 1 to 9, and POI 208, which is the same KPI, which is percentage of learners textbooks in every subject grade. So there were 2 KPIs where we identified material misstatement that eventually reported in the audit report. So which means there was 2021 to 21-22, one of the key regression. So I can say that I was requested to clarify relating to 3.3 as per our briefing document that was provided. There, basically, Chair, I think we're basically highlighting the comparison of AOPO findings in other provinces, the way we actually emphasize that have been also outlined in the general report. So the comparison was basically determining like which provinces where there were areas of material misstatements in performance report that was actually submitted for audit purposes. And in our basically paragraph also specify the fact that in the province of Eastern Cape, KZN, Limpopo, Northwest and Western Cape, we identify those basically a paragraph that we presented as requested by the members. I'll hand over to Sangita to further clarify or respond to any questions that were asked by.
Thank you very much, Lutando. So Chair, just to make sure that we cover the understanding as well as just to close some of the loops around the process. As an audit office, when we do issue the findings on performance information, it's done on two levels. The first level is on usefulness of information, and the second is on reliability of information. And as Lutando spoke, he spoke about the fact that the indicators and their descriptions were not sufficient enough for the gathering of information. But secondly, there's a bit around the systems and the processes that have been implemented, which I think the department have covered quite a bit around when they were answering the question around diagnostics and how they basically roll up information. So I think the important bit is to say that over the years, yes, the department has been grappling in these two areas around usefulness and reliability. And the most important aspect of it is to ensure that the indicators are adequately defined, that the description adequately defines what the process is to gather the information and it's directly aligned to what the objective of that indicator is. And I think that's where that comment comes in, where we talked about the standard operating procedure. And you'd see that the education department also mentioned that they have firmed up their standard operating procedure. That's the one part. The second bit is about ensuring that those people who play a very critical role in the system of monitoring, tracking, gathering, and reporting of performance information understands what is being looked for, and that when the reviews are being done, they are being done adequately. But there's one aspect that we elevated with the department through our discussions was to say that we should not conduct in-depth significant reviews only at year end, and this should be then a continuous practice throughout the year. And you'll see that that is what Lutando had elevated in the presentation. And I am hopeful that I saw quite a few glimpses of it come through. And even when the department did present, they did talk about it. So those were, as much as we may see that the findings have been somewhat regressing and stagnating, the root causes ultimately are the same, to say that the system of collecting, collating, and monitoring, which ultimately gets put into reporting in performance information, needs to happen throughout the year. I think the other bit I wanted to clarify is around the nutrition program and the work that we've done. Now, very closely linked to the audit officer's strategy for culture shifting within the public sector. I will touch on it on our next agenda item, but I just thought very briefly to say that when we went out to the schools to go see how the nutrition program is working and the selection of the items that we did, we do want to make sure that we can, as an independent assurance provider, tie up what the mandate of that program, what the mandate of the department is linked to the program, is ultimately being achieved. And I think it comes from our space to want to make sure that we match up what we audit. So remember, we follow the rands and the cents in terms of the financial information, ultimately follow how it's actually achieving what is set in the performance reporting and the performance targets, and then to see what it is really happening on the ground. And this insights that we gave to the department, where we selected a number of schools, was from a non-punitive base. So you can't say it's an audit finding that's going to impact the auditor's report. But what it is that from an independent assurance provider perspective, we're giving the department and the minister the view of potentially areas that need their attention. And it really pleases me to hear the DDG talk about having gone out there and rectified what we identified in the previous year, which is exactly what we're looking for. We send a specialized performance audit team out there to do that type of work. And I think it's where our value for money aspect comes in the environment. So I think I thought I'd rather elevate those aspects. No? Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, AG and now Honorable Maseko. I take it's a follow-up question, and if maybe there are other members who would like to have follow-up questions, I will request them to do so. There is also Honorable America. Let's go in that order.
Thank you very much, Chair. And again, for the responses, I appreciate that. Chair, I just want to find out from the department, because of the question of the people being followed by the money, because the allocation comes with the numbers of the year before. I want to find out if, because the kids, they get their removes if they're coming from a school to another, or there is a unique number that they use that follows them. So is there a mechanism in place, or is minister, this one, it goes to the minister, that how possible is it for the department to be able to bill the school before the following year to make sure the money that was supposed to be used by that people comes to where the child is on that financial year? And if that is a little bit difficult, what are the maybe can advise mechanism if we have to empower a standing committee to help the department? What is it that can we do to add value to that? Looking at the budget that we receive versus the kids that we get on a year, or what we call sometimes late applications that goes to our schools. And to Auditor General, Chair, through you, I mean, from the department to the department, there is the issue of the interpretation when coming to the KPIs. And it's something that is not unique on education. Agriculture has been there, What is the, and I take the AG is partner here, it's not in the position to be the police. What is the AG doing to make sure that there's no finding that is attached to the interpretation that the department, a department, will have a different interpretation to what the AG says? Because to me, there is in Afrikaans what we call a samenwerking. Now, if at the end on the auditing, if there is a misunderstanding of the interpretation, and that has been coming on for years, what is the AG doing? Because I tend to believe the AG also works in making sure the departments, they improve in their audit outcomes, not shortchanging the performance. Now, there is a certain percentage that I feel that the Auditor General has to deal with, and looking at that, what is it that they're doing? And if I can ask also, looking on the department's AG opinion, that there is an indication that in fact there is a regression, if I can say that in verbatim what the AG have said. I want to find out how do I put that? What is the audit committee's responsibility? Because I tend to believe they look at the AG's outcome and work with the department as they meet quarterly to check if those risks or challenges are being attended to. Now, if in, and I'm sorry, Chairperson, because it just came in, but I tend to believe the other members of the have been there of the audit committee, and maybe they gave the report. But I want to find out, what is your responsibility if there's no movement to level up. It's stagnant or regression. So the quarterly meetings that happens, what are the conversation if there is a recommendation from the AG that can improve and that is not happening? What is it from the audit committee that they can say to the scoper that is the problem that is making this not to improve as we anticipate to see the improvement? I think, Chair, that will be all from me.
Honorable America.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, having regard for the response provided by Mr. Eli regarding the internal control measures that have been tightened and put into place, and also recognizing that it's an environment that constantly changes with systems changes, etc. And I have no doubt that the measures that have been sort of highlighted and enhanced and put into place will contribute to the desired results that is envisaged. So I think the question that was not responded to is that posed by the internal audit committee, in a sense that having exercising an oversight role, are you satisfied that these internal control measures are adequate? Do they address what you may have identified and considered as being sort of gaps within the system? And will it then enable greater reliance to be placed on the outcomes of the reported, or not on the outcomes, but on the reported results? Thank you, Chair.
Department in the AG.
the responsibility to take the members of Scopa through the two requests that was made of Provincial Treasury. The one is the readiness of departments and entities of the Western Cape government for performance audits. And the next presentation is about the componentization of assets. Chair, I'm unable to see on my screen. Is the presentation being flighted?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. I'm proceeding to slide 2 now, and just an overview of what will happen is just a brief description on what is performance auditing. An example will be given of a performance audit. What are the advantages of performance auditing? What are the disadvantages of performance auditing? And what is the way forward? Now, members on the platform, the Auditor General of South Africa is mandated to perform performance audits in terms of the legislation that governs them, which is the Public Audit Act. They may conduct performance audits of departments and public entities, and that is to determine whether these organs of state have complied with the principles of sound financial management, including when they're doing procurement, the economy, the efficiency, and the effectiveness of that procurement. So the AG determines via their standing committee on the Auditor General and via the sectors they are mandated in terms of what is going to undergo a performance audit. It is not determined by departments, but departments have a responsibility to indicate whether or not they're going to receive the performance audit. The AG uses a risk-based approach that will take into account the issues around the entity size, the complexity, significance, and the history of performance. So this can be in any department, whether it be in the sector of health, in the sector of education, in local government, but that is something that is addressed by the AG herself with the Standing Committee on Local Government. A determination is made, and the local auditors will have discussions with heads of departments, with accounting authorities, or with municipal managers. So the criteria to select a specific audit may include the potential impact that it could have on the regulatory audit. It may include the level of public interest, and also it may include the likelihood of uncovering significant issues. Now, if one considers the level of public interest, I think during the lockdown and the COVID, the AG had played a much more significant role other than just doing a regulatory audit. They worked with the departments, with the public entities, and with the municipalities to give almost a dynamic view of what was happening under the procurement of PPE, protective equipment and clothing. So the AG, in terms of their own legislation, is allowed to do work outside of just the regulatory audits. Moving on to the next slide. History will tell us that the AG has conducted a number of performance audits in the past, and that covers a range of government programs and activities. They've performed audits on how state-owned entities have been managed, the provision of healthcare services, and specifically in Cape, I think it was in 2012, where they had done a performance audit on the management of infrastructure projects. And if memory serves me, an infrastructure performance audit was done for the Department of Mobility, which was then known as TPW, as well as the Department of Education and the Department of Health. So to the Cape management team in terms of the issues that was identified through that performance audit. The findings of these audits have varied, but sometimes and in many instances, they do highlight inadequacy in sometimes financial controls, sometimes poor project planning, and sometimes inadequate monitoring and evaluation. If one then considers what are the advantages of a performance audit? The advantages for government is that performance audits may identify areas of inefficiency or waste in programs and operations that could lead to cost savings and improved service delivery. And for the public, and that is the taxpayer, the residents within the Western Cape or within the borders of South Africa, performance audits may provide assurance that their hard-earned money, which becomes public resources, are being used effectively and efficiently, and it can help improve transparency and accountability or holding government accountable. The disadvantages of performance auditing, however, is that, Chair and members on the platform, if you consider the economic situation that we find ourselves in as a country, and almost the global recession that we've just come through, there are limited resources. But they're going to accept a performance audit. A performance audit is much more intrusive standards that governs performance audits, but it's not as prevalent as the normal audit standards that would govern regulatory audits. So in a constrained environment, as an example, the Department of Health says that if they are not able to cover the additional increases that was given for public servants, they are unable to appoint an X amount of nurses. A department is not going to easily accept a performance audit to be performed unless the benefit of that audit will far exceed the costs. Also, in terms of the high cost of audits within the Western Cape, and throughout the country, audit costs is always a contentious matter. And as there is costs, the departments and the public entities are reluctant to accept a performance audit. For performance audit, you also need a vast amount of data, and it's important that the right data is being looked at. There is also limited capacity, I would think, both in the Auditor General's office as well as in the departmental, because the timing of the performance audit becomes essential. If there is a performance audit that is done alongside of a regulatory audit, resources will have to be split, because in most cases, it's not the line function that deals with the performance audit. Whilst they would deal with the daily activities of responding to questions, the CFO's office will inevitably be called in to be able to respond to whether it is request for information or whether it is the communication of audit findings. Now, performance audits will be for management's review and is not a public document. Unless something comes out of the performance audit that could impact the regulatory audits. And that would place a department more at risk, because it is given that the Auditor General is significantly more detailed when they do the regulatory audits, because they do look at the financial statements, they do look at compliance with laws and regulations, and they do look at the reported information in relation to the PDOs, the predetermined objectives. And then possibly another last reason for why performance auditing at this stage of the journey, there could be inadequate governance structures, because they require an effective integrated governance structure where you actually see combined assurance working to the best of its design. Those are just some of the disadvantages. If I then move over to the way forward. So as the Western Cape government, we are constantly investigating in terms of consider who or where government can benefit the most from a performance audit. We are also continuously having discussions with the Auditor General on the lived experience and what such an audit would look like. However, we have to state, considering the current economic environment and climate that we find ourselves in, the government environment is not ready for performance audits because, frankly, as it currently stands, that's the first presentation as it relates to performance auditing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we can also move in view of the time constraint. I think let's move straight to the next one of componentization so that we can actually deal with them at the same time with questions and answers.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to confirm that you can see the screen.
Yes, sir.
So last year in the Provincial Treasury's own scope session, we had discussed the issue of componentization, but I think a discussion, if it's not written down, it becomes lost in translation. So we then opted to give the members a presentation that you can, when you're tired at night, go and read at home, and maybe like the accountants do, use this for some sleeping material. In terms of componentization of assets, we will again define what is a component or what is componentization of assets with an example. We'll give you the advantages of componentization, what is the disadvantages of componentization, and then we'll make some concluding remarks. So in essence, Chair, it is breaking down a significant part of an asset into its individual, separately identifiable parts that have a different useful life from the main asset. It is a requirement in terms of the accounting standards that the departments and the public entities are applying. And to put it simply, all of us knows how engine made up of transmission and wheels. What componentization means is that you take the wheels off and you depreciate it separately. You take the engine out, you depreciate it separately. You take the transmission out, you depreciate it separately, and you take the body and you depreciate it separately. Now, a motor vehicle is seen as a single asset. Can you imagine the amount of resources that's expensive, but so too is the engine of that aeroplane. In the Western Cape government, and I believe in the rest of government, there are few organizations that actually has to deal with componentization, but something that impacts all of our lives. An area where componentization must be considered is in the energy space. Because that is responsible for producing energy had been separately identified component parts, then the maintenance and the repair part of those plants and equipment may have been more accurately reflected, and departments, or let me say that for the significant assets or significant individual parts that makes up a significant asset. So here we're talking about materiality. And currently NT is revisiting the accounting framework because the systems are not matured enough to give effect to componentization. And the departments obviously do not have the necessary tools or infrastructure to deal with componentization. However, that we are moving fully into accrual accounting. The Provincial Treasury will definitely prepare and develop a support program to support the departments and entities where componentization would be applicable, to make matters clearer for them. Currently, there is no indication from National Treasury on whether or on the timelines for implementation. In this province, Chair and colleagues on the platform, you are welcome to go and look at the consolidated financial statements of the province. Whilst we have many assets, it is my professional view that there are very few assets in the province to which componentization will apply. However, our asset within Provincial Treasury is constantly looking at the asset base, and the necessary requirements will definitely be implemented to ensure that should National Treasury give componentization is now for lack of a better word, a law or a regulation, the province is in the process of readying itself for that. I thank you, Chair. That's the last part of the presentation.
Thank you very much for such insightful presentation. Both of them were very insightful and very educational. Thank you very much for that. I just wanted to check whether on the, I see Honorable America, his hand is up, and I take that that's, yeah, Honorable America.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I can simply just echo your sort of comments, and I want to thank Mr. Dean really clarifying and contextualizing this matter. And I think that this whole fetish that some may have had around performance audit has now sort of been provided with a context as why it could possibly be not fully implemented. But my question is that the difference between the regulatory audit, that is a mandatory audit that will continue to be followed, whereas the performance outcomes audit would be a separate, could be even ad hoc audit activity that is audited or that is being identified as having significant public interest. So that would not, the outcome of that audit, if it is sort of so conducted, will not impact upon the classification of the outcome of the compelling
requirement that the reporting will be in line with componentization based on the presentation. But I think that when Auditor General might dictate or direct us, I got the impression that the presentation says that the province will be ready when the time comes. That's just one question I would like to ask. Will you be ready when the time comes? Then, so far as performance audit, whilst I know that you did indicate that they were in the province where performance audit was conducted, but I could not get a definitive answer as to whether how were the outcomes. I think you've mentioned it was in the Department of Infrastructure. It might be good that to check, say whether what was the outcome. But one of the impeding factors to performance audit is that they are costly, they are time consuming, and they will need dedicated staff, which at this stage, I think you are saying that the province is not ready for that. That's just those are my two questions.
As it relates to the readiness of the province, Definitely, you will note that on the audit outcomes of the Western Cape government, in excess of 95% of our clients are sitting with clean audits. And that is both between local government and the provincial government, which means that we fully comply with the accounting standards for reporting purposes. There is just something that I have to correct you, Chair, is that the Auditor General cannot dictate the accounting standards. That is National Treasury's responsibility. And when National Treasury dictates that we will have to do componentization, we will have a phasing in approach. But again, for the types of assets that provinces have, there's very few assets to which this might relate to. If I give you an example, for a municipality, it might become more relevant because they have water sewage plants who they have different components on a water sewage plant or on an electricity grid. And then you might consider componentization or even then you might consider componentization. But for the administrative assets that the province runs, it is still my professional view that whilst we will be ready, very few assets will be impacted by it. As for the report on the Department of Health, Transport and Education, that report was delivered directly to the management of those institutions, and the chair is welcome to request that from that department. I do believe that since that audit was done in 2012-13, there has been a significant number of changes in the supply chain environment, specifically as it relates to contract management, as well as it relates to preferential procurement, as well as it relates to designated sectors. And that is why I'm saying a performance audit, when designed, must include the head of department or the accounting authority or the municipal manager, so that the outcomes of the performance audit are clearly defined upfront, and none of those outcomes, unless it is a compliance with a non-compliance with the law regulation, none of those outcomes will impact an audit. It would only assist the department to design better controls. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. I don't know whether there any views or comments that the AG maybe would like to have on both subjects.
Chair, we did prepare a presentation as well from our side on this, but there is some repetition from our presentation to what the Provincial Treasury has presented. But I think there might be two slides that I want to just concentrate on so that we could maybe just provide our comments. So if maybe...
Please do that.
Thank you. If you can please slide the presentation. Thank you. Then you can go to slide, okay. The next one. Okay. This one, yes. So Chair, what I wanted to do was to give a little context to what we're trying to achieve as an audit office around our culture shift strategy. And it's an intention for us to be able to move the culture within the public sector to one which is characterized by transparency, integrity, and accountability. And we want to do that by generating insights, and these insights are going to be identified and during our audit processes. We want to then utilize those insights to influence our stakeholders. And this is around action in the right direction. And I think, Chair, Honorable Chair, you saw that we talked about education this morning and about the visits to those schools. From what we find in terms of the nutrition program, we adequately influenced with our insights that we gained around the managing of stock and inventory to help the department see the areas they need to rectify, and rightly so they went in and they did what they needed to do. So that was influence in motion. And ultimately then, if we do need to use our enforcement tool, which is the material irregularity tool that we have to almost activate the responsibility and the role of an accounting officer in the environment. So I thought right context to give this, because we need to be that if we're asking for performance auditing, what exactly is the objective that we're trying to achieve? So if I could maybe go to the next slide then. Zani, around performance auditing. Apologies. Go to slide 7, please, Zani. So when we get to understanding performance auditing, the next one, Zani, please. So when we go to performance auditing, it's actually an independent auditing process, correct, which measures how management have actually allocated as also resources from an economic, efficient and effective perspective. So it's about the input, the activities, the output, and ultimately the outcome. And with our culture shift strategy, our intention is to be able to provide some level of insight that is going to give an indication around potentially the effectiveness of the systems that are around the achievement of the mandate of the departments. And I wanted to, as much as the provincial treasury presentation says, listen, it might be too costly to go down the performance audit route, I wanted to show the committee a different perspective to the value that's currently on the table through our insights process. We are not deviating from our mandate. We are still providing an audit. An audit has assurance in 3 areas, which is the financial statements, the performance information, as well as compliance with laws and regulations which have been scoped in. And Zini, if you can go to slide 5, what we've done further is we've actually looked at areas that we can provide additional value. Slide 5, Zini. So that value that we're giving is coming from a sector perspective. So these are audit focus areas. So what the Auditor General does on a yearly basis, directive, and in that audit directive we do an annual risk assessment to see in which areas can we potentially draw additional audit focus, and we've then taken our new strategy and identified these areas as well for insights. Again, it's a non-punitive environment. Sorry, Chair, I think there's a question.
No, please go ahead.
Okay. So the focus areas are linked to the sectors of health, education, human settlements, transport, and public works. There's quite an expanded view as well. This was for the last year. For the current year. And yes, there's been special reports like our water sector report that was issued last year. We've also done an infrastructure report very recently, which looks at the status of infrastructure in the country, with specific emphasis also around water as well. So I think it's correct. It's to some extent it's a non-assurance related engagement to do a performance audit. But when you look at our insight work, we give management factual findings, which is very similar to performance audit. We provide the accounting officers with an indication of the areas that we believe requires the necessary attention. These insights, and I'm not calling them findings, right? I'm calling them insights, Honorable Chair, because it does not impact the auditor's report. It doesn't impact the 3 areas unless we do find something that directly impacts the finances, or we find compliance issues and we find performance information issues. These insights are included in the management report to the accounting officer for acting upon, and we then do a follow-up in the next year. So I thought I wanted to elevate that just to let the committee know that there is that level of work that has been done. Sector work has been done for over a decade within the audit office. And what we've done is we've made sure that we've now expanded our sector work of the last couple of years since the implementation of a new strategy to ensure that we bring that level of insight to the table. And there is some bit around, yes, project management. There is aspects around looking at things from a countrywide perspective. We do some province specific as well, which we do in every sector, but a lot of those findings we will find in the management report, and we do elevate them from that sector perspective in the general report, like how my colleague Lutando presented this morning around what appears in the general report for the nutrition program. So I thought, let me elevate that. In terms of componentization, I think from our side, just an emerging risk, yes, just for the province to become ready when it does become implemented, but we are aligned in terms of that it's not yet a requirement, and that when it does become a requirement, we will then audit it at that point. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think once again, the report is self-explanatory, and again, is also very insightful and also very educational. I think if we can just arrange to get all those presentations, both of the department as well as of the Auditor General, like it was indicated, is also one of those reports you will want to even maybe during bedtime reading. So if Mr. David, you can just make sure that all the members of the committee actually do receive those. In the absence of further questions and the point of clarity, I think it then allow me to make use of the opportunity once again to thank the Provincial Treasury and the staff that have managed to come and be part of us and make the presentation. Thank you very much for always being available. It's a pity the minister and the HOD could not be present, but we understand. Thank you very much. Audit. Thank you very much. You may be excused now as we are going to proceed with other business of the committee. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Yes. Now, Mr. David, I think, I don't know, there's only two of us that are present, and I think in terms of the rules, we are a quorum. And if we can just, I don't know whether maybe we'll leave the resolution, maybe when there are other members present, or the issue of the minutes as well, we can tackle it now. I see Honorable America's hand is up.
But Chairperson, I'm not too sure, and I don't know if your interpretation of the rules is correct. Me, quorum is 3 members, and it's just you and I. So, in my view, that we do not have a quorum, and therefore we cannot take decisions or adopt minutes or reports, and it has to stand over to the next meeting.
Yes. Chairperson, I do agree with the interpretation of Member America on this matter, Chair, because I thought that perhaps Member Kasim will also be in the meeting, and then we would have been 3 members to the quorum for adoption of the committee documents, and then as well moving to resolutions or recommendations or requests for information from pointers emanating from this meeting. But as there's only 2 members, Chairperson, unfortunately no recommendations can be made, and the committee documents cannot be considered and adopted, Chairperson.
No problem. Then in that respect, I think then we adjourn the meeting and then present the minutes as well as maybe even resolution at our next meeting. Let me make use of the opportunity once again to thank everybody that has attended. Honorable America, we have stayed the test of time till the end of the meeting. Thank you very much for your presence and for your indulgence as well. The meeting is adjourned, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chairperson.